Hi everybody, FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos here, and what I'd like to do now is to go from the opposite end of the spectrum from last week. So last week we looked at some great technique by Magnus Carlsen. Today we're going to look at not really a technical, the technical aspects of chess, but rather some opening stuff. And what we're going to look at is far from Magnus Carlsen. It's going to be my games against some club players back in 2004. And the reason for this is that I recently received a question, I think, in the comments of my blog. My blog, for those of you who don't know, is at thechessmind.net. You can just Google my name and find it that way too. Anyway, someone made some comment, and it's one that I'm sure is familiar to all of you too, about openings, or certain openings in particular, but openings in general being, to some extent, memory contests. And as I just said, I've heard this many times over the years, and it's especially prevalent at the club level, but I think it's just completely wrong. I mean, there are certain positions, certain variations where, yeah, you do have to have things memorized. You can't avoid it. But those are really pretty rare. They at least make up a fairly small portion of the total number of theoretical lines, or of theoretical in the sense of opening theory lines. Most of the time, and even in the very sharp variations, what really counts is understanding what's going on, understanding what the plans are, what each side is trying to do. And if you can do that, you may not figure out all the latest and greatest finesses of a given opening, but you're going to be able to avoid a lot of trouble and generally be in good shape. And this applies especially at the club level. So as I said, I mean, occasionally there are some lines where you just have to know stuff cold, but even in those cases, generally knowing what the whole point of the variation is will help you go a long way. So to illustrate both sides of this coin, that if you kind of know what you're doing, you can avoid trouble, and if you don't think about what you're doing, if you don't really understand what the plans are, then you'll get into trouble. So I wanted to show you some games I played in the club championship in my area back in 2004, so quite a while ago. Anyway, I had black in this first game, so we'll go through these one at a time. There's one that we'll skip because the player was just extremely low rated, and that game was just too one-sided, and I think too far below the overwhelming majority of you guys. But most of these games, I mean, are going to involve players who are, if not necessarily at your level, maybe they will be at your level, maybe they'll be a little bit above it, but not so far below it that it'll be useless. So this first game was played against a 1684 player. All right, so as I said, I had black, and I played at this point the Sveshnikov, or at least I was trying it out. Now, there's a lot of theory on the Sveshnikov. This is true, but what's the point? If you haven't seen this before, you should think, well, what's wrong with black's position? Why is e5 a rare move in a typical Sicilian defense? I mean, usually black doesn't play that, or at least doesn't play that for quite some time. Some Najdorfs you do play it, in the Boleslavsky system in the classical it gets played, but generally in many lines it doesn't. And even in those lines, what's the obvious problem with playing e5? Well, it's the d5 square. So and also the d6 square. So these two squares are both kind of vulnerable. So that should immediately spring to mind the idea of playing something like knight d to b5 to try to take advantage of this square, or at least knight to f5, right? So this could be playable too. This would make sense. If you're familiar with those other lines, like in the Najdorf, you might also, or the Boleslavsky, you might think of knight to f3 as well, with the idea of perhaps playing like this at some point, again, fighting for the d5 square. So, but my opponent played with apparently no awareness, or he didn't take his time to think about this. In fact, yeah, he moved immediately. No, maybe he spent a couple of minutes on this move, but he played knight to b3 pretty quickly. And then after bishop to b4, well, now his pieces are passive. I'm not going to have any problem with the d5 square because we're threatening to take on e4. And if he defends it, then I could play d5. For instance, if he played bishop to d3, I could play d5 if I wanted to. And already, I'm probably slightly better. So he played bishop to g5. I just played h6. No big deal. Now he could give up his bishops, but I'm okay with that. That's fine with me too. So he went back, and now he just loses a pawn for basically nothing. Castled. I took and played bishop to f5. So a little simple tactics there. I mean, if he takes on d5, then I can play knight takes c3. So he just has to kind of eat the pawn deficit. And another little trick. Okay, I play queen d6, threatening queen a3, and then knight c3, and then queen a2 mate, assuming he takes the bishop on f5. So he went here. I played here, and he made this desperate exchange sacrifice, but really, there's just no compensation to speak of, and I went on to win kind of fairly easily. So again, again, the first illustration here just shows, okay, knight to b3, he didn't take seriously enough what the position is about. Knight to b3 has nothing to do with d5, nothing to do with d6, and for that matter doesn't help him with the defense of the e4 square. So this made my life very easy, and I won. Okay, so let's move on to the next game. Okay, this game I had white, and it's against the 1345. So a fairly low-rated player, but anyway, we'll still try to extract a little bit out of this. All right, so e6, and then I played c4. We'll see more of this later. And here he played rather passively, but this is okay. c6, I played d4, and just follow basic principles. All right, so why not play a move like d5? This should be perfectly healthy. Grabs fair share of the center. In fact, on knight to c3, we would transpose to a main line position in the triangle system. After d takes e4, knight e4, bishop b4 check, bishop to d2, queen takes d4. We're in a famous Marshall Gambit. Not the Marshall Gambit, not the Ruy Lopez version, but still a very mainline gambit system against the Slav. So that would have been kind of the common sense way to play. And to some extent it's necessary. And also, I mean, what's the point of playing e6 and c6? I mean, both of these support the d5 square. So if you don't play it, I mean, you play with like c5, which is what he did. Well, now, after d5, I'm in a type of Benoni with an extra tempo. So he plays queen to c7, afraid of me playing d6, understandably, but why not just play d6? So again, make a constructive move, bring the minor pieces into play. So instead he played queen to c7. All right, great. I play knight to c3. So now I'm threatening to play perhaps knight to b5 and then d6. Well, again, instead of playing d6, he plays a6, giving away another tempo. So I played f4. All right, so now I might play e5 and d6. So now he plays d6 finally. I played knight f3. He plays e5. And I'm comfortably better. So I'm not winning the game, but by just violating basic principles, I have a very pleasant position. And went on to win fairly easily. Although, again, I mean, if I were playing a higher rated player here, I think black can still put up some resistance. But white's position is definitely very comfortable at this point. All right, so again, if you don't pay attention to what's happening in the position, right? I mean, if you don't look at what the pawn structure is all about, then you're not going to find good moves most of the time. Okay, well, let's look at the next game. So here I have black against a very good player. It was 1900. He quickly became an expert. So a young and talented player from our area named Cameron Adonis. Hopefully he'll come back into chess at some point. So he got interested in other things and I think went on to college. But usually our game sucks people back in, and hopefully it will with him as well. So I had black, and so here we go. So e45, knight c3, knight c6, bishop c4. I'll just say a quick word about this. So nowadays I play knight f6, but knight c6 is okay. The thing I like about knight c6 is that well, it's avoiding the regular Vienna with f4. The thing I'm not sure I like about it is that white can play f4 anyway. So it's an old gambit. I think its reputation is not great, although it's kind of gone up and down, the reputation of the Hampy Alligator gambit. But rather than get into those complications, I think I prefer knight f6 now. But they're both fine. Okay, well anyway, that's what I played, knight c6. I should say, Brian Smith, I think, played f4 against me. Or maybe it was that he played 2 bishop to c4, knight c6, and then f4 against me back in I think 99 or thereabouts. So he was already a good player, but he wasn't an IM yet. And we had some crazy game in like a game 10 or game 15 tournament that I won, but really just kind of mind-boggling positions. Anyway, he played Donis, my opponent here, played bishop to c4. I played knight f6, and now the right move here, that might be a bit strong, but I think it's probably accurate. The right move to play here is d3. So after d3, then you can play kind of in a quiet way with knight to f3 next, or you can play bishop to g5 and go for the canal variation of the Joko piano if black plays bishop to c5. Or you can play for f4, depending on what black does, going for a transposition to a King's Gambit declined variation. But instead he played f4. Now, here's a place where it's not so much knowing heavy theory, but just knowing a basic bit of theory, which is that if white plays knight to f3, black has this standard rejoinder, knight takes e4. So it's not really hardcore theory, it's just a bit of basic knowledge that these fork trick ideas exist, they're around, and generally speaking, they're pretty good for black, or for the player that's initiating the fork trick. Because, okay, if knight e4, d5, bishop d3, de, sometimes black can also try f5 as well. But, okay, d takes e4, bishop e4, bishop d6, and the theoretical verdict on this position is that black has no problems whatsoever. I remember some old game I played where my opponent played d3, and I played knight to e7, and that more or less won the game on the spot. I'm not sure that black is winning just yet, but the threat of f5 is quite worrisome. And the problem, if I remember right, is that on d4, well, I don't have to remember, I can just work it out. Let's see, f5, if the bishop goes back to d3, there's e4. So the question is, does d takes e5 save white? And I don't think it does. It looks like bishop to b4 check should be the winner. Because I'm going to have 2 pieces to capture, or two captures versus 1, or 1 capture versus 0. So that's a funny little trick there. I think white's supposed to just castle or play d4. Anyway, so I knew that, and when he played f4, I think I knew from years ago that knight takes e4 was the theory. Oh, I should go back to this, sorry. One more thing on knight f3, knight e4. If bishop takes f7 check, king takes f7, knight e4, d5. Here, black's king has moved, that's right, but black has this tremendous center, the 2 bishops, and white really doesn't have access to black's king. I mean, he can throw in a check if he wants. It's no big deal. We just go back, and then he's just going to get kicked around. h6, bishop g4, e4, moves like this, and black should win. Well, I think there's one silly little trick too you should know. So knight f to g5 check, king g8, queen f3. Okay, so here, well, actually I'm not even sure if there's anything to worry about here either. So I was thinking you needed to be accurate with queen of d7, but maybe you don't even need to be that accurate either, because the knight on e4 is in the way. So if queen e8, knight f6 takes, queen d5, king g7, there's nothing there either. So the bottom line is knight f3 is easily handled by knight takes e4. So he played f4, and well, I played knight takes e4 all the same. Now here, the crucial move for white is knight f3, and I remembered this much, and that black I think is supposed to play queen to e7 here, or at least, no, sorry, I'm thinking of a different line. Yeah, not queen to e7 here. That would just be a blunder. But right, it's takes, and then queen to e7. Yeah. So this much I knew or remembered, but that was it. So I just was going to have to trust myself that I would be able to figure out everything out from here. If he castles, the point of queen e7 is that if white castles, then queen c5 check picks up the bishop. So you can play like that. I guess you could probably play knight to d6. Maybe this is tolerable as well. And I suppose white plays bishop to b3 or bishop to d5, one or the other. So they both, I guess, are okay. But again, the burden is on white to prove that he's got enough for the pawn. Anyway, he didn't know the basic thing though about the mistakenness of this capture. So I just took, he took, d5, check, here, and I've never seen this position before in my life, but I mean I knew, okay, the basic fork trick is generally good. It's not clear why f4 should help him more than knight f3, bringing the g1 knight to f3. So here I am, 7 moves into the game, and I've already got a serious advantage. He can't take on e5 because his knight on g5 would hang, and meanwhile I threatened to just push him back. So he played d3 to stop e4, which is a good idea. But now I played queen to e8, so I'm threatening to just take on f4 for free. So, and also to play h6 and then e4. So he played queen f3. Now a little trickiness. Okay, I played e4, I played h6, I played knight to d4, and then I just took. So takes, and here his development is very poor. My bishops, and I've got 2 of them, 2 is 1, are going to come to very good squares. And indeed, I've already got a clear advantage, if not a winning one. So I went on to win pretty comfortably. Maybe I didn't find all the best moves from here, but still, with substantial advantage, it wasn't really that tough a task. Okay, so let us look at the next game here. And this is me with white against a 1750 player who had been 1900, so he's, you know, a bit on in years, not quite as, you know, doesn't quite have the stamina that he did, but still a decent player. Alright, so I had white and played the bishop's opening here and played f4, so just trying to push him a little bit. Now, it would have been more accurate to play knight c3, I think. And then perhaps black can play c6 as well as knight to c6. So we just go from there. But I played f4, so I'm immediately putting pressure on him. Now, has he seen this position before in his life? Probably not. I kind of doubt it. I don't think I've had this exact position before in a tournament game, and maybe only in blitz games. And I'm not even sure about there. Well, maybe. But still, let's think about this not from the standpoint of memorizing tons and tons of theory, but of just using principles. Alright, so black can play any number of sort of normal moves. He could play knight to c6. That would be a pretty obvious move to play. He could play knight b to d7, although I don't really see what the idea with that would be with that. I mean, why shut in the bishop? That's what he played. But knight c6 makes sense. But also, when your opponent is opening the center and he hasn't developed, it might be a good idea for you to try to open the center as well and to fight for it. So, just thinking from those along those lines, how about a move like d5? Why not this? So if e takes d5, knight takes d5, f takes e5, well, from here, you know, maybe queen h4, but you see, okay, g3 doesn't really get anywhere, so this doesn't quite work. Alright, so if we're hanging the e pawn, well, the next thing you might think is, well, why not e takes f4? Why not e takes f4? So then on bishop takes f4, then you could play maybe d5. Alright, so this looks pretty logical. So it doesn't sacrifice anything. We're opening the center. Bishop to b3 doesn't look very attractive at all. And on e takes d5, knight takes d5. Black should be in pretty fair shape. I'm not saying he's better, but you know, the position looks pretty healthy for him. And I have to be careful. I have to be careful about these dark squares, like e3 especially, and the a7 g1 diagonal and the e file. So that would have made more sense. So instead he goes into this little bunker with knight b to d7, and now I just get to have a very nice position for free. Here probably bishop to b3 was more accurate, but I suppose I was trying to either frighten him or just kill him right away, and played f takes e5. Well, once again, principles come to the rescue here. So he played knight to g4, which is interesting in one sense. So I like the idea that he was thinking, okay, if e takes d6, knight takes c4, and then you know, maybe his position's not so bad. Bishop takes d6 next. But I just played bishop to b3. He took, I took, queen h5, and here, okay, I played bishop to g5 and kept a big advantage, but it would have been better just to castle. And I spent a long time thinking about this. I think the reason I rejected it was that after this, I'm winning a pawn, but letting him trade queens, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to try to kill him in the middle of the game. So, you know, being a little too aggressive against a lower rated guy, and I won. I mean, it worked, but you know, I try not to play incorrectly even against a lower-rated player. But anyway, the point is I'm already just winning here. My position is just fantastic. I've got a great center, lead in development, attacking chances. He's got weaknesses. So everything is in my favor. So what should he have done? Okay, well, after f takes e5, he should have played de. Okay, knight e5, takes, and now maybe bishop to e6. And at least here, he's got a little bit of compensation, thanks to the bishop pair. So, okay, I would definitely prefer white here. No question about that. But again, go for some counter chances rather than just going for one little cheap trick, which after bishop to b3 is done. All right, let's see the next game here. Okay, and in this game I'm black against another mid-1700 player who also has been, I think, over 1900. So f4. All right, so I've faced this very, very rarely in my life. I mean, certainly I've seen it, but I haven't seen it enough that I've had to spend deep, study preparation time trying to come up with a reply to it. So I know a little bit about the Dutch, and I'm just going to more or less play in reverse Dutch fashion. All right, that's what I did. So g6, and then he plays this stonewall idea. Well, all right, have I studied this at all? Well, with colors reversed, a little bit, yes, but this, no. But again, just general principles. All right, what is white doing wrong, so to speak? So he's giving up the light squares, and in particular, of course, e4 is a weakness. Now, what's the only piece that defends this? Well, it's his light squared bishop, and my light squared bishop is not going to be. I mean, it's a decent piece, but I'd really like to get rid of his light squared bishop so I can just dominate on e4 in particular. So I played knight h6. And this has a couple of other ideas. One, as you might recall from a game that I presented where I beat the Dutch Stonewall, was where I played for an e4 plan with white. So here it would be for e5. So the knight, conceivably, depending on what white does, I might play f6, knight f7, and e5. Alternatively, in the game after bishop to d3, well, bishop f5. So he castled, I castled, he took, I took, and now my knights are on their way to their ideal squares. c3. Remember, I mentioned this back then. So we put the knights on these two squares, and life is good. Okay, he plays knight to d2. I play knight f to e4, and I'm happy to trade a pair of knights because I can kick his knight out of e5. He can't kick my knight out of e4. So life is good. He plays knight d2 f3. I play f6, knight d3, queen d7, hitting the pawn on g4. He played knight to d2. And here I can kind of do what I want, but I decided, all right, I'm not going to initiate the trade. Why help him develop his bishop? So I played b6 with the idea of playing maybe c5, and also, of course, keeping his knight off of c5. Okay, he played queen f3, and now because his queen is on the same line as my rook, I can play e5. So he plays knight f2. I play rook a to e8, and now his position is pretty awful here. So knight t to e4. D takes e4, queen g3, takes, f5, and here my positional advantage is decisive, and I went on to win fairly easily. So again, just knowing some general ideas. This guy has played f4. He's played the Stonewall for many years, for decades. All right, I've seen this maybe 3, 4, 5 times at most in my tournament life. But again, just knowing a little something about the Dutch, a little something about the Stonewall, enabled me to find, pretty natural moves, and I was better just right away. Within 10 moves, I had a very nice positional advantage. Okay, one more, and rather than being a brag, this is showing me on the opposite side of the banana peel. So this is me against not a very high-rated player. The guy was 1550, I think stronger than that. I mean, he's been, or he's since made it to 16 or 1700, but not a player whose rating is close to mine. But by just playing good moves, following good general principles, he achieved even a slightly better position with black in the opening. All right, so I played this kind of silly sideline that I used to try, certainly in blitz a lot, rarely in tournaments, but I think at this point I felt I wanted to try it. I wanted to see if I could get the kind of quick win in a tournament game against a lower-rated player that I often did in blitz games. So this is the line, and the idea is that, okay, if black likes the line d takes e4, you get this kind of fun possibility. So it doesn't mean that you're going to win with it. I mean, there are various refutations, but this is just to illustrate the idea. All right, so now let's say black plays some kind of innocuous move, no, like c6. Okay, well now bishop to g5, and so now threatening rook to e1. He's got to keep this covered, and black can just fall apart very rapidly here. And I've won lots of games with this. And here, for instance, b5 is too late. Rook e1. If bishop e6, you just take, and everything falls apart. So there are a whole number of little tricks and traps in this system. It doesn't work. You don't have to write in with the refutations. I wrote a blog post on this years ago, giving at least a dozen good ways for black to meet this variation. Anyway, in the game, my opponent played knight to f6, which is a perfectly decent move against this. I played knight c3, which is an okay response, and he played bishop to d6, which is really quite a respectable way to meet this. So if I play knight takes d5, he has knight takes e4, and the upshot of that exchange is that he has this decently placed knight. Although you might think, well, what about queen to e3? Isn't this a problem for him? And the answer is that it's not, because he has castles, so he can take advantage of my lack of development, the point being queen takes e4, rook e8. So that's unpleasant. So I just decided I'll just grab the pawn and try to finish developing and hope that the pawn can count. But he just plays well. He castles. Okay, I played knight f3. He checks. And he's just going to play knight to b6 and then knight takes d5 and round up the pawn and be happy. And of course I can't take twice because bishop h2 check would win the queen. So if you don't know what I mean, I'll illustrate for those who are unfamiliar with this idea. And then next, there's queen takes d5. So I played bishop to c4, since he's threatening to play knight takes c3 and then grab my bishop. So bishop c4, c6, bishop c7, or bishop g5, queen c7. And all right, maybe at this point the position is probably about equal, but still with pretty decent moves, he's gotten himself into a good position. Now here he kind of gets himself a little bit outfoxed, but actually what he did was okay here. Although I should have played rook f to e1, and then I think after bishop g4, knight e5, takes, and the series of exchanges. Probably I'm a little bit better at this point. Maybe not just probably, maybe just period. I am better at this point, thanks to some little tactical tricks like rook to b8. Then I think I just take here. And he can't take with the knight because then I can take on f7. If he takes with the queen, that hangs, the rook hangs. And if g takes f6, then I can play queen c3, c6. And he can't take this guy because bishop f7. So this time I have the little trick with the discovered attack on the queen. So this, I think, does give me some edge. But I think, at least as of this point, he should be completely okay. So, yeah, maybe he doesn't need to take on d5 right away. He could play something first to prepare it. But the main point is that with just very good, very natural moves, he achieved really quite a good position against a much higher rated player, and crucially in an unfamiliar opening. So, following principles and following plans, knowing plans, is what makes most good opening play work. So it doesn't mean that you're absolved from the necessity of knowing some theory, but the theory generally has to do with achieving certain plans, putting pieces on good squares, and preventing your opponent from doing the same, from executing his plans and putting his pieces on the best possible squares. All right, well, much more can be said about this, should be said about this, and maybe I'll return to this point in a later video. But I thought that would be at least useful for many players who have kind of bought this line again, this bit of received wisdom that I think really isn't wisdom. That opening theory is just about, and mainstream openings are just about memorizing stuff, about getting involved in a memory contest. Maybe at the World Championship level, there's a lot of that, but even up to a pretty high level of club play, it's just not the case, with rare exceptions. if you know what you're doing, if you understand the plans, you understand the middle games, you'll avoid trouble and you'll get good positions. So don't jump out of theory, or if you jump out of theory, don't do it because of that argument. It's not a very good one, I think. So hang in there. You won't have to dedicate your life to understanding opening theory. If you delve in, you look at critical games, you look at model games for each side, and extract the plans from them, that will go a long way to helping you really play good chess in the opening. All right, so good luck. I hope that helps you, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.